So, welcome everyone to the next Presca Lunchtime session. These are the webinars, and I'm Rob Webben. I'm the CEO of Presca, the world's first climate positive sportswear company. And we are trading 15 minutes of your time to hear from some brilliant people in our network. So, if you wouldn't mind just turning off your microphones, that would be much appreciated. Um, Today, really happy to introduce you to someone I met by chance at the Better Business Act meeting in London. Nick Stoop, you're a sustainable finance specialist. And so, Nick, do you want to tell everyone all about what you do and about your company, Pangea?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for having me on, Rob. And it's great to see you again after the past few months since the Better Business Act Day. So just a little bit of background on me. I guess I was born into a sports mad family, so love the outdoors and have always sort of enjoyed and feel sort of most alive, I guess, when I'm sort of in the ocean in particular. And that aside, I equally have a big passion for financial markets and a training in economics through university days. And really, I sort of spent the first 15 years of my career sort of slowly sort of figuring out how I could combine the two. And I've come to realize that more recently that there's this lovely area of the financial markets called impact investing. And that's really investing into companies that are sort of focused on sort of doing good as well as doing well. So these are for-profit companies, but they're looking to try and solve some of the planet's ills, social inequality, etc. And so I sort of stumbled across this niche a number of years ago, and it really was very early. But I sort of felt that that was something that I had to sort of spend some more time looking at. And the more I looked at it, the more I felt that there was a real opportunity to sort of allow people to align their values with their investments. And it was really with that in mind that I set up my business, Pangea Impact Investments.
Amazing. And am I right in thinking you were kind of poacher turned gamekeeper? You kind of came from the traditional, I'm going to say bad side of finance. It's not bad. Money makes the world go round, but we know that a lot of money goes into places that aren't actually driving positive change. So that was your background originally, is that right?
Absolutely, yes. So I started off my career in the asset management world, and I spent the first sort of 10 years of my career with BlackRock, which was an amazing sort of learning curve, and it allowed me to work and live abroad, which was wonderful. So lots of incredible experiences. But actually, as I sort of progressed through that sort of first phase of my career, I realized that a lot of the products that I was promoting and supporting didn't really align with who I was. And I think you sort of reach a stage where you sort of feel, now that I've got the experience, I could sort of go and do this different. And that was the conclusion that I drew.
Amazing. That's brilliant. And I'm ever so glad you are doing it. Something that I discussed last week with Joss from Enviral was around how the power of nature to engage us in the kind of the sustainability discussion. And I wonder whether your love of the outdoors and your love of nature is what's driving you. Is that fair to say, to driving you to be more positive in the way that you're working with money?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, as I mentioned at the outset, I've always enjoyed and sort of feel most alive when I'm sort of in the elements, I guess. And I think combining that, I've got my wife and I, we have a young daughter. She's
Mm,
coming up to 3 years of age. And so I think, although I'd been thinking about it before then, certainly that sort of focuses the mind a little bit around the climate and everything that's sort of taken place over the past few years, particularly this summer. It's become very apparent and sort of much more on our doorstep.
yeah.
And yeah, I feel that I was very fortunate to have gone into the career that I went into. And basically, how could I sort of think about using those skills to do something that I think will probably only move the needle a little bit, but even if it only moves it a little bit in a positive direction, then that's something that I could then sort of feel proud of and certainly feel much more passionate about in terms of, sort of getting me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, if everyone moves the needle a bit, that's a massive change. So tell me, Pangea, where's your focus with money? How are you putting money, people's money, to good use?
Yeah, so this all really started with a problem that I faced about 3 years ago. So I mentioned sort of through my old career in the asset management world, I traveled and lived and worked abroad, and that was wonderful. But one thing I hadn't really looked at, therefore, for a number of years was my own personal pension in the UK. And that was something when I got back to the UK, I was so keen to address. And clearly, with my sort of experience, I sort of knew exactly sort of what to be looking at and what to look for. And what I really wanted to do was to align my personal pension with my values, which were so very much sort of including the environment and this lovely area of investment known as positive impact investing. And when I went onto my old workplace sort of pension platform and looked at the underlying fund options, I realized that they weren't available. The funds that I sort of knew and I loved and wanted to allocate my savings to just weren't there. And so that was a sort of a bit of a light bulb moment. And I looked at a couple of other workplace pension platforms, and the same was true. And so I just felt that actually I needed to sort of build this solution because while I wish to sort of use that solution today, I'm sure lots of others would be interested in that solution in the future. And what was great was in terms of the sort of underlying market, there are more and more products that are being sort of launched into that space, which is allowing pension investors and investors more broadly to be able to sort of invest in that space on a slightly more sort of diversified basis than would have been the case maybe sort of 5 to 10 years ago.
I mean that's amazing. I know. I think I'm right in saying that one of the most impactful things that we can all do is change where we're putting our pensions because actually over the lifetime, then that's a very significant chunk of money. Yeah, we have ours with just one of the standard company pension providers, and there is an ethical option there which I've ticked. I've got to say I really need to do a lot more homework. I know I've ticked the boxes, but I don't know much more than that. I mean, how can we find out more about where our money's going? Is it through working with people like you? As a fairly uninformed pension consumer, what are our what are our options?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I think pensions have never been all that exciting, so people don't tend to spend too much time sort of looking into the depths of them. And actually, I should say that it can sometimes be quite difficult to actually sort of peer down into those depths because I'd say sort of regulation and the pension providers in the UK sort of almost, I think, somewhat sort of purposely make it a little bit opaque. But what you can do immediately is you can look at the underlying funds within your pension, and you can then go online and look at those fund providers. And when you go to sort of each individual asset management's website, you should be able to download a fact sheet, which will tell you the top 10 holdings within the fund. So there's still a bit of work that's required there, and it's not as sort of clear as it should be and as transparent as it should be. And that was effectively what I did. So 3 years ago, when I looked at my holdings, I could see that within my sort of aggregated top 10, when I looked at across all of those funds that I was invested in, there were a couple of fossil fuel companies, there was a fast fashion company. So basically businesses that really were sort of at the opposite end of sort of aligning with my values. And what's encouraging is that there are now solutions out there that have been there for almost up to 20 years in some cases, that have been investing into financial markets, liquid financial markets, but they've been sort of specifically focused on investing into companies that are looking to do good and do well.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it sounds so naive, but isn't it interesting how we've all got our money in pensions and yet, and that's, the same is true with our banks as well. I'm a big advocate of switching to banks that don't invest in fossil fuels and arms and those kind of things. But how we have our money in these places and we put it there and we just assume, it's doing its thing. But actually, when you look into the detail, oh, geez, I'm invested in a fossil fuel company, a fast fashion, the arms trade, all these things, which actually you wouldn't go out and give. Well, you do to a fossil fuel company every day, but you wouldn't actively say, "This is where I want to invest my money for change."
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the journey that I sort of feel I've been on, and I'm sure you've been on a very similar journey, Rob, is I think in our sort of day-to-day lives, I'm sort of a big believer in what you sort of purchase. It sort of has a big impact on the world so gradually. And so for things that are tangible, we've all been sort of improving our habits in terms of recycling or not even having to recycle, using sort of the ones of coffee cup um, and that's all well and good, but also there's a sort of an intangible footprint as well. I like to call it an intangible footprint that we all have. And as you say, that's where you bank in terms of your savings and where those savings are lent terms of the underlying companies that they go to, and that might not always sort of align with your values. And the same is true of your pension. And I think that the reason why we should all be engaging much more with our pension is that the flexibilities within the UK were sort of introduced in 2015 to do so. And so while it can be quite a sort of scary thought thinking about sort of digging deeper into it, actually the system is much more user friendly than it was 7 or 8 years ago, and you are able to sort of pretty quickly make the changes that you might wish to.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's something I need to do more of for sure. And I'm sure there are plenty of other people who will watch this and think, yeah, I need to know more actually about this kind of thing. So I certainly will off the back of this. If I know you mentioned it a second, but if we go to that big pension provider that we're holding money with and just say through the chat, can you tell me where my funds invested? Will they do that, or do you have to go and do the work yourself?
No, I think if you're able to sort of speak to someone on the other end of the line, then they should be able to provide you with some basic information.
Mm,
What they probably won't be allowed to do is provide you with any advice. So there's a
mm.
big sort of separation around regulation for
Yeah.
providing information and then sort of providing advice on top of that. And I think the area which often it is worth sort of delving deeper in is to sort of really look into some of the ethical sort of holdings that sit within the sort of the ethical box, so to speak, when you take these pension providers. Because again, I feel that a lot of them could be doing a lot more to incorporate much more sort of aligned investments than they currently do. I'm not going to say it's sort of greenwashing, but certainly I feel that there's been some less effort on that front than perhaps could be the case.
Nick, this is the this
David.
is the this is the forum you can say it's greenwashing, and we're
Oh,
all
okay.
it will
Yeah,
be,
okay,
and
maybe.
yeah.
Yeah, elements of greenwashing then perhaps, but this is the thing. I think the way that financial markets have evolved, there's absolutely no reason why they can't be fully aligned now. This is not a scale problem any longer, which it might have been 10 years ago.
Okay. Okay, amazing. I would love to sit down over a coffee and really dig into this with you. And hopefully, when I'm next down in South Devon, I will be able to do that. And we can have a surf together.
Yeah, fantastic.
Um, in the meantime, that's already coming towards the end of the time. So I will ask you the three questions. So, what is it? What does community mean to you, and why is it important?
So community for me, I think it starts with sort of knowledge sharing, and then I sort of feel that often it moves from sort of knowledge sharing to friendships, and then I guess sort of beyond friendships, sort of love and support really, but particularly sort of through both highs and lows, and so being able to do that consistently within your community.
Brilliant. And why should we care about the climate?
So I've got a few numbers for you, which I thought might be quite interesting. So you'll probably know that there are 8 billion people living on Earth today, roughly 8 billion people. Um, so Homo sapiens, so humans have basically been around on this planet for about 2 million years in terms of our findings. And over that 2 million years, there have been about 120 billion people in total that have lived on this planet or been born onto this planet. Now, the reason why the climate is important is because we're living at the moment so beyond the climate and our planet's boundaries, and we really need to sort of bring the planet back in within its boundaries, and we can only do that in terms of the way that we live. But if we're able to do it, then over the next 2 million years, this is where the numbers get quite so scarily large. It's approximated that there'll be 80 trillion more humans that can live and thrive on Earth over the next 2 million years, given the way that populations have expanded in the history of time. So I sort of feel that we owe it to those 80 trillion people that we're able to provide them with a planet that they can thrive on.
Oh wow. That is brilliant numbers. Your first person to bring numbers to the show. I love it. Thank you. And um, and finally, what makes you feel positive? It's a big, scary world out there, especially when you hear the news of the floods in Pakistan, the crazy weather we've had over the summer, all these things. What is it that makes you get up every day and say, right, I'm gonna keep making change today?
Yeah, it is difficult to feel positive day in, day out. I guess what I sort of hang my hat on, I feel that in the history of sort of if you look at the last 150 years, whenever sort of new technologies come along and has sort of been better for humanity, it's been adopted really quite rapidly. And that's particularly the case of more recently. So if you look at transports of the motor car, if you look at sort of the history of flight, how quickly we went from the Wright brothers going up in their Wright Flyer for the first time to sort of 40 years later, sort of commercial flight was being introduced across continents. And so I feel that where technology allows solutions that really are going to have a really positive impact on society, then humanity can actually adapt to these solutions really very quickly. And I think certainly in this day and age, even more recently, just looking at the adoption and sort of spread of the COVID vaccination, that maybe 100 years ago would have taken sort of 5 years, and sort of it took 18 months or so, given the speed of sort of communication technology today. So I sort of feel that's an area that we can sort of all hold hope and hang our hat on, and undoubtedly with the speed of change in terms of renewables and other areas of industry, I think that could accelerate very fast.
Amazing. Thank you. Nice bit of positivity there. Right, that's pretty much it, Nick. Before we finish up, please can you tell everyone who's watching this now and in future how they can find more about you and specifically about Pangea Impact Investing?
Yeah, no, thank you, Rob. So you will be able to find me predominantly on LinkedIn. I spend a bit of time there. So just under my name, Nick Stoop, and our company, if you were interested in following our company, it's Pangea Impact Investments. That's also on LinkedIn. We're also on Twitter, and we have a website, which is www.Pangaea.Earth. So really through any of those.
Pangea.Earth is a lovely website with the waves on the front. Very nice. Excellent. Thank you. So that's been really, really interesting for me. I do think we all need to know more about where our money is going, and obviously, speaking to an expert is just so important. I've learned about an intangible footprint. I never even thought of it, but of course it makes a whole lot of sense. And we all need to vote with our wallets, find out more about where our money is going, and then we need to vote with our wallets and put it into more impactful places. So thank you, Nick. Next week we're going to be speaking to John Twitchin from Stuff for Life. Link for that will be going up next week. Stuff for Life, a chemical recycling firm. So we're doing a bit of work with them, looking at how we can take clothes and make them into new clothes. Really, really exciting. John's a friend of mine now from the cycling industry for some years. So please do come along and listen to that. In the meantime, I hope you all enjoy your weekends. I hope you get out there and recharge in nature and come back feeling positive to carry on the good fight again. But thank you so much for your time, Nick. Real pleasure to speak to you. And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you very much, Rob.